Disclaimer: the contents of Studio 151 podcasts and the TU Communication Disorders Connection podcast do not represent the views and beliefs of the University of Tulsa and the Mary Kay Chapman Center. Hello, welcome back to another episode of the TU Communication Disorders Connection podcast. This is your host, Alyssa Hall, and today I'm joined by two special guests. Our first guest is Emily Main, who is another second-year graduate student here with me at the University of Tulsa. Emily, thanks for joining us today.
Hi, thank you for having me.
And our second guest is Maggie Savage. Maggie is an SLP who is also a TU alum. Good to have you back. And a contributor to a new book titled Understanding and Affirming Autistic Clients, a primer for mental health professionals. Maggie, I'm excited to hear a little more about your work.
Thank you so much for having me, you guys.
Thank you for coming. I really enjoyed this book. As a non-traditional student that actually has a son that has autism, this is really exciting to read. Yeah, it was really exciting. He's 9. His name's Teddy. He's actually mostly nonverbal. He does echolalia and he's a Gestalt learner and all that stuff. So I really enjoyed the book a lot. And so I wanted to ask you, what inspired you to write your chapter in this book?
Yeah, well, more what gave me the opportunity is that I'm married to one of the authors, to be completely honest with you. So this book, written by Dr. Chris Dabbs, my husband, and his colleague, Dr. Audrey Skier. They are both autistic psychologists, and this book really is for mental health professionals that are working with autistic clients. And they saw a need, both being autistic professionals and having encountered sort of like ableist situations or the way they communicate not really being understood and being seen as like abrasive or hard to work with. And so seeing that as a professional and then just seeing that their community wasn't always getting the resources they need when it came to mental health counseling. And so they really wanted for it to be kind of a holistic lens and really accessible for mental health providers. And obviously a huge aspect of working with a client in therapy is talking to them. And because I'm married to Chris, he reached out to me and was like, well, you have expertise and experience working with autistic people in different ways you can support the different modalities they use to communicate. Would you write this chapter? And so I was really honored to be a part of that. It's really cool.
Yeah, that's exciting. Could you define the term allistic for unfamiliar listeners?
Yeah, allistic is just a fancy word that means not autistic. That's literally all it is. If you look under sort of the umbrella of neurodivergence, there's a bunch of different things. There's autism, there's ADHD, there's OCD. So you can be neurodivergent and allistic. So like myself, for example, I have ADHD and OCD. I'm a neurodivergent person, but I'm allistic because I don't have autism.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. One thing that I hadn't heard of at all until recently in this book was about the double empathy problem.
Yes.
What are some factors that contribute to communication breakdowns between allistic and autistic people?
Yeah, well, the double empathy problem kind of explains this really well. There's a really cute cartoon I recommend looking at, by the way. She's an odd ADHDer, so she's autistic and has ADHD, and she has an account called NeuroWild that really animates this really, really well. But basically, if you see two autistic people communicating, there's not a lot of breakdowns in communication. If you see two allistic people, non-autistic people communicating, we don't really see a breakdown. But sometimes we see autistic people and allistic, non-autistic people having trouble in a breakdown in communication. Up until very recently, the burden of why there's breakdown in the communication has been placed solely on the autistic person. But what we know now is based on the double empathy problem that autistic people can communicate and allistic people can communicate, but they have different styles of communicating sometimes. So think about if your first language is English and you were talking to someone whose first language is French, it's not that either of you can't communicate, it's that you're kind of speaking different languages. Not to kind of put that in the sense that like if you're allistic or autistic, you're like, an alien or speaking another language or something, but like just that there's differences and nuances in the style of communication. So to give you some examples of how that might happen, there can be differences in terms of how we feel someone is listening to us. A lot of autistic folks say that eye contact is something that at best can be uncomfortable and at worst painful right? And a lot of people who are allistic feel that eye contact is how you show them that you are attending to what they're saying. That can be a breakdown. It could be this person's not looking at me, they're not even listening. An autistic person might be like, why is this person trying to stare me in the eyes? I feel really uncomfortable. It could be what you want to talk about. A lot of allistic people tend to jump from topic to topic, engage in small talk, right? But an autistic person might have specific special interests that they want to talk about, things that are like really dear to them that they want to talk about at length, or just kind of like a thirst for knowledge about things where they want to talk about things more intensely. Empathy is sometimes one of the things we see expressed differently. A lot of allistic folks will try to mirror whatever emotion they see someone showing. Sometimes autistic folks will be like, oh, I went through an experience like that, and they want to relate that way. Allistic folks might see that as the person trying to make the conversation about them, when really the autistic person is trying to show, oh, hey, man, I've been where you are. My husband talks a lot about this when he was learning to be a psychologist in terms of masking his autism, which masking, if you don't know that term, is putting on this mask of neurotypicality, where he was having to learn to imitate his clients' facial expressions. And his clients were perceiving that as being cold. So just a couple of differences that come up.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
I'm kind of curious, like being partnered with someone with autism, has that impacted like your communication with each other?
Yeah. We're a neurodiverse household. I have ADHD. Chris is autistic. But yes, no, it definitely has led to communication breakdown sometimes. And the more we get to know each other, the more we're able to be like, hey, I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt here. I don't think you're doing something like out of malice, but I definitely think there's a breakdown here. So he also, and I saw that you guys want to talk about monotropism and that cognitive style. He is very detail oriented. He says monotropism is missing the forest for the trees, where it's like tiny little details. And I'm more big picture oriented. So there have been times we've gotten in like arguments because I feel like he's trying to correct me, like just to be right, but he's trying to make sure he has the details correct.
Yeah. I feel like that was kind of a natural lead in into talking about the monotropic polygenic communication styles. Could you explain what those mean in general, but also what those mean for you and the way you communicate in your partnerships and with clients?
Yeah. So monotropism in general is a cognitive style. It's the ability to focus really intently on either like one thing or small amounts of things for long periods of time. We see this with a lot of, and again, I just want to preface that just because someone is autistic doesn't mean they're going to check every single one of these like communication or cognitive styles, but we do see it a lot with a lot of autistic folks, that deep focus. I think sometimes people will see this as a flaw, or just because it's very different than a lot of allistic or neurotypical folks, just because we tend to kind of jump from topic to topic. A lot of times you see this as like, have you ever heard of an autistic kiddo being labeled as like rigid, right? So they might have difficulty transitioning. It's not to say that they don't necessarily have difficulty, but only seeing it as like a deficit versus like, yeah, maybe he has trouble transitioning to a new task, but he also can focus for 30 minutes on building a Lego tower that looks like the Empire State Building. Like there's strengths that come with these things as well, right? Like I think it would be a strength if I could focus on my IEP reports for 3 hours at a time, but I'm not a monotropic cognitive style, so.
Right, because I remember reading the book and other stuff about neuroaffirming is there's a lot about like trying to make people with autism be compliant. Well, the way I had learned more, like what I did with my son when he was a lot younger, was more from an occupational therapist, and we took what he liked naturally and then used that to segue into other things. So like when we were wanting to get him to start putting things together when he was like 4, he really liked letters because he was hyperlexic. So I showed him how to build alphabet letters, and then he just went like crazy, and he was just building like, we're going to build the letter A out of Legos, and we're going to build the letter B out of Legos. And that was how we got him to do his hand coordination, like more fine motor control. Rather than trying to be like, you need to make like a tower. It was more like, accept him for where he is and then take where he is. And then I had introduced like some sentences and words with him, because I would draw like a block letter A and I'd put a smiley face on it. And then I'd be like, letter A blows bubbles. you have to do letter B needs to blow bubbles. But I would have to say it's one of those things that I remember finding super endearing. But as, a mother of an autistic kid in a world that doesn't, they really want more compliance. I found like that oddly controversial depending on, which therapist I happen to be talking to. Like some would be like, oh, you gotta stop doing that. And other ones are like, this is amazing. And so I just remember thinking like, oh, that was like, to me, it was just such a little simple motherly thing. And it was just interesting to see the reactions. It is very much like the world is like, no, you need to be like in this shape.
Yeah, and I think there's ways we can support those things as strengths, right? And that's not to say that when an autistic person lives in a largely holistic world that we can't make them, we can make them aware of how they communicate differently, right?
Yeah.
There might be times that because of the way their brain works, everyday life might be challenging, but rather than just be compliant and deal with it, tell them about the strengths they have and the areas that they might need support with, help them figure out how to navigate those when it comes to sensory overwhelm or not knowing what to say, or I don't understand when my holistic peers don't talk to me, but they make a face. There's ways we can kind of teach them about the differences of the quote unquote different languages autistic and holistic people speak and make them aware of that, but not force them to adhere to it and change who they are as a person. Big transition I've tried to make in my practice over the last few years. Absolutely.
All right. I think with that, we're going to wrap up our discussion today. First, I want to thank Emily. It was really great to have your perspective as not just a graduate student, but a mom of an autistic kid. And I also want to thank Maggie. It's been so great to hear your expertise and in clinic and also as a contributing author to a book about this subject. It was great to hear from you today. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to talk to my alma mater about those. Thank you so much.
It's nice to meet you. It was really nice to meet you.
Yeah, you guys too.
For everyone who listened into this episode, we hope we will catch you in the next one and have a great rest of your week.
For further information or podcast ideas you'd like to share with us, please reach out at 918-631-2504. And remember, communication is not just about words, it's about understanding, empathy, and connection. Until next time, keep listening, keep learning.